A lot of people think of medieval Europe as being pretty similar to Game of Thrones, full of scheming nobles and a powerful king at the top. But outside of Europe, there were many other kinds of monarchies that developed in the Middle Ages. Some were much more powerful than European monarchs. Others had little in common with the kingdoms of the Westeros. Let's explore some non-European monarchies from history's Middle Ages. Though most of the world was ruled by monarchs during the Middle Ages, Europe is where we typically think of the medieval period starting, and also where we think of the powerful kings. This is because of how the continent was united under Roman law and then Christian theology, which helped set it apart from the rest of the world. But even here, the power of kings varied wildly. England's King John was so unpopular that he lost his kingdom for a few years to a combination of barons and a French monarch. While in France, a powerful queen regent named Isabella of Angoulême actually chopped off her husband's head and put their son on the throne. Such stories are what inspired authors like Shakespeare and countless Games of Thrones wannabes to write about powerful kings who controlled everything with an iron fist. But in reality, most medieval European monarchs weren't that powerful. Outside of Europe, however, there were plenty of rulers who could put the monarchs of Westeros to shame. One example is Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan and founder of the Mongol Empire. After his father Ogadai died, Kublai took over the empire and set his sights on conquering China. However, when he was asked to submit to the Song dynasty, which ruled northern China, he responded by conquering them and establishing the Yuan dynasty in 1271. This made him the first ruler of a Pan-Asian empire, and he would go on to conquer much of Southeast Asia as well. At the height of his reign, his empire stretched all the way from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, and though he didn't have any magical powers, he did have an elite army, a massive amount of wealth, and a well-organized government. His administration was one of the first to use accounting rules based on double-entry bookkeeping, something Europeans wouldn't do until the Renaissance. And while Kublai Khan was amassing huge amounts of wealth in Asia, a powerful African empire was reaching its peak as well. The Kingdom of Mali was founded in 1230 by Sundiata Keita, who brought together a bunch of different West African states into one empire. He did this through military conquest and diplomacy, and established a government based on Islamic principles, which spread quickly throughout the region due to the efforts of Muslim traders. His successor, Mansa Musa, took the empire to new heights. During his reign, he conquered much of northern Ghana, and then undertook a pilgrimage over 4,000 miles to the city of Mecca. When he arrived, he released all of the slaves in the city and gave everyone free gold. Then he came back home and continued to expand his empire. By the time he died, he controlled most of modern-day Mali and Senegal, and parts of Mauritania, Gambia, and Guinea. But unlike the Mongol Empire, the Mali Empire wasn't very bureaucratic or centralized, which made it harder for them to maintain control over their vast domains. Still, Mansa Musa is considered by many to be one of the greatest medieval African rulers and a possible candidate for greatest medieval monarch. Now let's go to Mesoamerica. While the Mongols and the Malians were raising great armies and building huge empires, the Mexica were doing something a little bit different. In 1325, they founded the city of Tenochtitlan on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. This became the capital of the Aztec Empire and one of the largest cities in the medieval world. However, the Aztecs never really thought of themselves as an empire. That's because their empire was a bit different from others. They weren't trying to absorb all of the nearby city-states. Instead, they were independent and left other Mesoamerican states alone unless they wanted to trade. Because of this, the Aztecs weren't constantly at war like many other medieval kingdoms, which gave them time to focus on other things like engineering and art. They built impressive temples and palaces and created a unique writing system and calendar. They also excelled at making canoes, which allowed them to dominate the lake trade routes and grow wealthy. However, their wealth did not bring them peace. And in 1520, they got into a fight with the Spanish conquistadors, who had recently arrived in the New World. Though the Aztecs fought bravely, they had never seen horses before and were easily defeated. But if the Aztecs' biggest weakness was their lack of horses, then the Kingdom of Congo must have been one of the most powerful nations in Africa. Founded in 1392, the Congo Empire was located in present-day Zaire and was known for its large size and abundance of wealth. The reason for this was the same reason why Kublai Khan and Mansa Musa became so wealthy: trade. The Congo Empire sat right in the middle of the trans-Saharan trade routes, which brought in huge profits for merchants. This money was used to fund the creation of monumental architecture, including the iconic Mogadishu mosques. These mosques were some of the largest religious buildings in Africa during the Middle Ages, and a testament to the wealth and sophistication of the Congo Empire. However, the empire's power would eventually be destroyed by slave traders. Unlike the Malians, who kept their slaves in their own empire, the Congolese sold their prisoners of war to Portuguese slavers, which led to a huge depopulation of the empire. This made it easier for neighboring states to conquer the remaining Congo lands and end the empire. While the destruction of the Congo shows us how powerful kingdoms could fall, it also gives us an example of a powerful kingdom in Eastern Europe. The Kingdom of Hungary was founded in 1000 AD by Stephen the Firner and would go on to become one of the largest kingdoms in Europe. Its borders stretched all the way from Austria to Serbia, and its people spoke a language completely unrelated to Latin. In fact, there were so few similarities between Hungary and the rest of Europe that historian Norman Davies called the country a slavish appendage to the rest of the continent. Throughout the Middle Ages, the Hungarians resisted attempts from neighboring kingdoms to absorb them, such as the Mongols, the Ottoman Turks, and the Habsburgs. Their resistance was aided by their geography, as much of their territory was covered in swamps, making invasions extremely difficult. This resistance lasted until 1526, when King Louis II was killed in the Battle of Karansebes. Following this defeat, Hungary was divided into 3 parts and absorbed into the Habsburg, Ottoman, and Russian empires. The Kingdom of Jerusalem might not have lasted long, but it did manage to make a pretty big splash in the Middle Ages. Founded in 1099 by European Christians during the Crusades, the kingdom was home to some of the most important holy sites in Christianity, such as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Despite having a small population, only about 2% of people living in the region were European Christians. The Crusader kingdom was able to exert control over the region through superior technology and organization. For example, they introduced gunpowder weapons to the Middle East during the Siege of Sidon in 1118. Unfortunately for the kingdom, its population was too small to support a standing army, so they often had to rely on European soldiers to defend the realm. When the Ayyubid dynasty invaded in 1187, they were easily defeated. Although the kingdom was able to hold on for another 50 years, it fell to the Mamluk Sultanate in 1291. Just like the Kingdom of Jerusalem had powerful neighbors, the Empire of Trebizond was sandwiched in between 2 superpowers, the Byzantine Empire and the Kingdom of Georgia. Located on the eastern coast of the Black Sea, the empire was founded by the Byzantines in 1204, after the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople. While the empire was small, only controlling parts of modern-day Turkey and Georgia, it managed to survive for another 300 years thanks to its mountainous terrain. Even though they were in a constant struggle to stay alive, the emperor managed to commission the construction of several incredible churches, including the Church of the Holy Apostles. It was one of these churches that finally brought an end to the empire in 1461 when the Russians invaded and captured it. As you can see, the medieval period was a time of great change and innovation all around the world. So next time you're watching Game of Thrones, just remember there were all kinds of powerful monarchs out there in the Middle Ages, not just in Westeros. If you want to learn more about some of the craziest monarchs in history, click here. And don't forget to subscribe.